Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second edition of the GB7 series here during GB105, the 105th birthday anniversary of Gwendolyn Brooks. I am Darius Colquitt, the beloved tech director for Brooks Permissions, and I am so excited that we are back here one more time doing this with you guys, celebrating the illustrious Miss Brooks. And we get to actually spend time with the people that know her best, the friends and the family this evening. So we're very excited to be able to do that. Before I toss it over to Nora, I just want to say how much I'm so thrilled to be able to work with this organization and work under the name of this wonderful woman. Nora was asking me the other day to kind of explain how I feel about being a part of, the Brooks family, or the Brooks Permissions family at least. And I was saying that it's kind of bittersweet for me because I got to know Nora and Cynthia, who have worked together for years. When I was a child, I met them when I was 11 years old. And that's kind of how I got introduced to the family. They were running a theater company, and it was, just how I got in, meeting the people. But I didn't meet Mama or meet her work until I was in high school, and we were reading, of course, We Real Cool, as well as one of my favorites, which I don't get to talk about a lot, of DeWitt Williams. So those two in combination met me at once, and that was when I was like, oh, okay, I need to know more. And I'm so glad that, piggybacking on that, I got to know Nora and Cynthia the way I did, because that brought me way deeper into the fold than I ever thought I would be in, especially as an artist and a writer and a performer. She is the Oracle of Bronzeville, as we've called her. And I mean, I like to say that, at least that's my belief. I'm not going to be the only one talking. We have a lot of wonderful people here this evening. But I do have to share a very important video from. I'm sorry, we're going to leave that till later. I forgot. So I'll actually be tossing it over to the president of Brooks Permissions, Nora Brooks Blakely. So here she is. Nora, you are muted.
I always do that. Hello everyone. I am so glad that we've got the people that we have here today. That is wonderful. I think you're going to be really excited to learn about Gwendolyn Brooks. We also talked about 300 degrees of Gwendolyn Brooks. Well, in this session, really get 360 degrees. So I'm looking forward to you hearing these stories and connections. And but in the meantime, that we wanted to talk about from the perspective of Brooks Submissions, which as of last fall was 20 years old. We were 20 years old. And so we are very excited about the longevity and about how important this whole legacy thing is. And so, from the perspective of Books Submission, we grant licensing. Most people know that, but a lot of people don't realize that we also have produced our own works, uh, graphic Gwendolyn's, and several other things. And if you're ever interested in getting more information on that, just go to our website, gwendolynbrooks.com. So, but what we wanted to talk about was sharing information on why this legacy commitment is such a commitment to those of us at Brooks Submissions. And I want to give a shout out to Pam Williams, couldn't be with us today, but she is our fearless client services manager. And without her, all those contracts, all those permissions, all those rights that people asked for would just never happen. So, hey, Pam, woo woo. But yeah, so the video that Darius was alluding to is that our vice president, Cynthia Walls, had something to say about how she came first, not to Brooks' permissions, and we've known each other like 40, 50, but um, but also Mama first asked her to manage the company that she, Mama, created called the which she named after my grandfather, David Anderson Brooks. And so she
Mhm.
had to manage that. And so Cynthia had a few thoughts on that.
I had been infused into the Blakely family for about 10 years when Mrs. Blakely, aka Gwendolyn Brooks, asked me to manage her new company, the David Company. Gwen had decided she was going to self publish. Her new company was named after her father, David Brooks. Gwendolyn Brooks, who was the poet laureate of Illinois, and also like a second mother, trusted me to handle her precious works. This left me both in awe and with a lot of fear. Running the David Company was an educational adventure, a challenge, and a joy. It also prepared me to work with Brooks for Missions to help keep her legacy alive. The David Company published several of her books: Blacks, Winning, Gottschalk and the Grand Tarantelle, Young Poets Primer, and more.
So thank you, Cynthia. So, so Jess, I don't know. I guess we should just jump in here for just a couple of minutes and um, talk about. Uh, you started a little bit of it when you were talking about the bittersweetness of it, and so um, each of us has our own skills and talents, but but uh, they has just been awesome. Uh, he's the person that handles our tech stuff. He handles our websites, other social media, and so I guess maybe that's where you could jump in. There's about just how it's about that. What works for you, you know. So what rings your bell? What doesn't?
Sure, sure. I mean, I've been doing social media management now for Brooks. Oh gosh. I don't even know how long it's been anymore. I stopped keeping track after like year 3. Um and for me it's been a thing of I've always appreciated the legacy and what it means not only to us as black people and us as a lot of us, should I say, as Chicagoans, but what it means to the the African diaspora in general, just in the world. Because Mama often talks about how black is an open umbrella. Black is everywhere, baby. Um, and it must be acknowledged and seen and loved and loved. So I think I try to take everything that I know through conversations that we've had that Mama has stood for and stood on, all of that love and all of that gratitude and all that dedication, and I try to put that into everything that I put out. So sometimes it takes me, all night to put a program together. And that's okay for me because I know what it means. I'll take a sleepless night, or two to make sure that the legacy stands. It means that much to me. So yeah, that's just kind of where I am. That's my passion. That's where my love lies, if you will.
And I guess the thing for me is, if you had asked me about legacy when I was a teenager, I wouldn't have been happy because at that point, you're a teenager and you're striking out on your own, trying to figure out who you are,
Mm.
and uh, instead get people coming up to you and saying, this is Gwendolyn Brooks' daughter," and so even sometimes friends would say, "This is Gwendolyn Brooks' daughter." I'm like, I have a name, and so uh, and that would just really annoy me. But then to the point where when I first went to college, and we had to in an English had to write about a pet peeve. My pet peeve was that people thought my initials were GBD, Gwendolyn Brooks' daughter, and and so I, um, however, that began to change, and I began to realize that it was just a marker. Like if somebody was trying to place you in a family or in a community, and they said, "Oh, honey, this is Aunt Sally's child," you know, I began to realize that just like that, it was a marker. It connected you.
Mm.
It helped people figure out where you fit, and it wasn't just something that I alone had to bear, but it was the way that most people were describing and referencing people in their work. That this person belonged to this person was connected to this person, and then um, um, and I always enjoyed going to readings with mom and read, going to a writer's retreat at one point, and at a at a poetry conference, and all of these different things. And I always enjoyed those parts. And then as I got older, I started writing more.
Mm.
Um, I really started appreciating the connection, and I saw some of the infused of her work. I saw some of that style showing up. In fact, I had told her one time that I thought that we had formed an alliterative alliance because I'm an alliteration junkie, and I definitely got that from her. Um, After Mama passed, there was um, I read Maud Martha again, and before while Mama was still with, I read Maud Martha, and I thought it was a really good book. But you're reading your mama stuff, and so that's exciting to everybody else, and it's interesting to you. But you're reading your mama stuff, and
Mm.
after she passed, and long after, I reread it, and with no filter in between, I could really, really understand just exactly what a masterpiece that book really is, and started thinking of different organs or body parts that I would give up to be able to write like that. So that became another reason of why legacy started becoming to be really important. And then I started doing readings and going out and doing readings of Mama's work and talking about her, and discovered all these people that would come up to me afterwards and talk about how her work had impacted them. And one young woman, and she was not a, but she stood out to me, came up and from speech to the young, speech to the progress toward. And she quoted the line about even if you are not ready for day, it can not always be night. And but she told me that it got her through college, and it got her through college a level of that she actually felt that she might have could if she had not had those lines that she kept saying to herself at different points. And that really, really made me sit up and understand why it is so important for this work to continue in the world. The lines that people want to put now about we are each other's harvest, we are each other's business, we are each other's magnitude and bond, from her poem, The Tribute to Paul Robeson. So many different lines that have informed people, reassured people, um, nurtured people, and understanding the stylization, as several people use the word meticulousness of rightness until it's right, that inspires people to do better in their own right. So that to me is so much we do, and and why like have have it. And there's several organizations out here that do legacy, and some of them are do legacy as well as other. Some of them include mama is part of the legacy that they do, but this is the only thing that is all we are about is promoting and maintaining, and as we say as part of the statement, demonstrating the continuous relevance.
Uh-oh. Well,
I got
well, that was the perfect amount of time. Funny enough, you started breaking up as soon as you finished that statement. So it was the perfect the perfect moment to stop speaking. But I know we want to get everybody else in here. So Nora, would you like to do the honor and introduce?
well. Our first, and we have two memory lane sections, and our memory lane section leads us to uh, known from all kinds of different as my second as a second mother, as a friend of a buddy of, and as my director, my boss, when I was in part of Kuumba Workshop for so many years. And so I'd love to be able to introduce the fabulous Val.
Hello, everyone. And this is a special, special day for me from my bed. You all. And I want to say happy birthday, first 105 to Gwendolyn. And I also want to say to Haki, a belated happy day. And I wrote a poem, and you are going to get it. If Nora said, Val, you have 10 to 15 minutes. How could I sum up? Either the genius of my sister, my friend, the poet. How could I tell you about her? Ooh, I could tell you that I was one of the happiest days of my life was my taking Gwendolyn home to Mount Bayou, Mississippi with me for Founders Day. But then that's just one of the times. I could tell you about times we went to conferences at Ann Arbor, University of Michigan. I could tell you about a time we went to celebrate Robert Hayden at Ann Arbor. I could talk about uh, Atlanta, and the last time we attended a conference together just before Henry died. I could tell you, oh, so many nights we spent at 7428 Evans. I could tell you that Haki was her poet and her son. Well, she was my sister and my friend and my friend and my confidant. We attended restaurants. We attended conferences. We went to see, well, Al Green. I talk about that in seasons. And I could tell you so many things about Gwendolyn Brooks. Wonderful things, creative things. I can tell you that I knew Gwendolyn a long, long time ago, and I'll be 90 on August 21st. I wrote a poem called How Do You, I want to cry. How do you build on a tower of truth? I didn't realize as many times as I have read Old in Seasons, the book that the Brooks Permission put out. But then I remembered, I think it was in 1969 or 70, when, let me back up and tell you about one night. Late one night, we had always literary parties at Gwendolyn's house, or our house, my house. But then I used to attend the writer's workshop with Haki and Jahari and Ransom Boykin and so many, many, many more I could tell you about. And at that time, I was known as the voice of the Black writer, because even prior to that, I would do the Harlem Renaissance. I still do the Harlem Renaissance. But we did Haki and Carolyn Rogers and others. That before Kumba ever did a play, our plays were made up from Baba Haki, who was Don Lee then, and Carolyn Rogers and Jahar and Sterling Plump. I could go back. I could talk about Obasi, and I am so glad I had this experience. But I was reading last night Ode. Now, this is in Seasons, and I recommend that all of you get this book and read all the poems, but particularly this essay called Ode. And I wrote this poem, and I'm going to repeat it again because Gwendolyn answered me. Ode. And Darius, if you would play now. And
by Gwendolyn Brooks. One of the truths I know is that the oldest person is just as alive as the youngest. That sounds simple, but it isn't credited frequently. The fact that the customs claim you have 1 year to live and that your neighbor has 20 years to live does not mean you are less alive than is your neighbor, nor does it mean that your enjoyment of the sunshine remaining to you need be poor in quality than the enjoyment of your neighbor. Does not mean that you need rejoice less than your neighbor rejoices at the friskiness of happy animals, at the warmth, wit, and wonder of children. Often now, I'm the oldest one in a room. It feels a little odd if I'm made aware of it. The fact of it is impressive too. I believe that people my age and people older should continue to involve themselves in the challenges, pains, comforts, and responsibilities of this world. I say to old people, what those other people are doing out there affects you. Act. You can act from a wheelchair or sick bed. You can act as long as you are alert and moving at all. To act does not mean to get out of necessarily. A grin, a hand clasp, or if you can manage it, a piece of wisdom from the breadth of your impressive experience can operate as important act. You are alive until you're dead. 10 minutes before you're dead, you're alive. You could save the world in 10 minutes. It's a possibility. You are alive until the end of the split second of your death. Bravo. Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, it's just love. It's just love from a genius, from my sister, from the poet, right? And yet, everybody, she helped poets. She helped brothers and sisters. Ask the Lone Rangers. She walked in a what do you call it? A thing we had. They're going to have. I forgot as Nefertiti, and Gwendolyn walked with us. And Kumba, when we went to taverns, she said, "Oh, that's the most exciting times of Kumba." It was wonderful. And I hope I haven't gone over. Oh, I've gone over my time. Wonder if Nora didn't have me cut off a long time ago.
You haven't gone over your time.
I'm sorry.
No, you've got actually.
I have not gone over my time.
You actually have 2 minutes left. You were doing great.
What are you laughing at, Haki? Jane, didn't you see me, Jane? I'm crying at the same time. Okay.
So if you want to whip something else in there, Val, in 1 minute, go for it.
Oh, did I have another minute?
Got another minute.
Oh, I do. Well, let me say it later, and let me. This sinus is killing me. You should have heard me try to hold my breath, but then I saw Carol and Safisha and everybody else who had sinus. So after a while, I didn't feel too bad. Oh, but you don't know what it is to be among you. And I have 1 minute left. I kept trying to get in when it was Haki's party because all of our friends, and I did want to say that, I did say it earlier, I hope, that it is Nikki Giovanni's birthday also today. I've already done happy birthday to her, but I wanted to be so Parenga and had everybody there. And I told Laura after, I was trying to get in, and if I could have gotten up out of this bed, I would have gone over there. Okay. All right, I did my minute.
We have as a cluster of cousins, and so to just take to have interaction. And you're in room and get a little bit about you.
Nora, you are breaking up a little bit. I think it might be a slight sound issue. So can you project a little bit? See if that helps.
Okay.
Yes.
What's the matter?
I'm about to shut up because
what did they say?
So introduce yourself.
19. You got time.
Go with that. And I'll only jump in if it seems like so.
Okay. So I don't know if everybody caught all of that, but what I'm almost certain I heard was, cousins, go for it. Have the conversation. Enjoy yourself. And if Nora feels like she has to jump in, then she will. But let's talk about Gwendolyn.
Good
maybe you want to go first, Nora.
Serious feedback. Okay. I would say what I'm thinking happen is that you all don't that and everybody like each other. So you first make and then talk about let's do a thing. Let's talk about young years. So when for those mama, those who do 3 years, then let's talk about wait. Okay, so let's do it like this. Uh, you go first, and then you, as some of the young people said, talk to somebody else. So you get this, and we'll go. Does that make sense? So Kayla, you go first.
Okay, I'm sorry, Nora. Again, your signal I think is like really really bad. So
Okay.
we're missing stuff here and there. So who do you want to start with, name wise? Just throw it out there.
Okay. I said Carol could go first. Carol, you can come first to another cousin. You can pick another cousin to pick up after you.
Okay, so she said, Carol, you go first, and then you pick another cousin to go after you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hello, my name is Carol Roberts. I'm about the 4th or 5th cousin of Gwen's. I am related to her on her father's side. And I remember growing up with more with Nora than with Gwen. I'm older than Nora, but I met Gwen through my mother, who was Nora's. I met Gwen through my mother, who was a cousin of hers, and so we got to know each other as family. And the thing that I wanted to emphasize tonight is the fact that Gwendolyn was a very generous, loving person with her family. She was caring, she was kind, she was compassionate, and anything that she wanted, anything that she could do for you, she would. I recall one year after her mother died, she took my mother on a trip to Europe. And at that time, the trip, Gwen didn't fly. So you have to keep in mind that this was just truly an offer of love and compassion. And she took her on this trip to Europe. They went to many countries in Europe. And she did not fly, did not like to fly, but she did that because my mother had been so kind to her mother when her mom was ill, and she wanted to do something to repay her. And of course, Gwen was always a very generous person, very loving person, and very caring. And so she did this for my mom, and my mom would always remember her, remember that. And she got to go to Europe at a time when Black people really didn't travel in Europe. And she got a chance to see things that she wouldn't have normally seen. Another thing I remember Gwen did was become the commencement speaker at my daughter's graduation when my daughter graduated from high school. And the entire faculty and staff and students received her very royally. She spoke on when life gives you a lemon, make lemonade. And it was so encouraging to the children, encouraging to the staff, encouraging to me. And the fact that Gwen took her time to do this for family just made it so special. And my daughter will always be grateful to her, and so will I. There are other stories I can remember. One year when Gwen, Henry, and Nora came to the college I was attending, George Williams College in Downers Grove. And they were there to support me for a reading that they were going to do for the student body. I especially liked her readings from Maud Martha and The Life of Lincoln West. Since we were a college focused on social work, I loved how Gwendolyn portrayed little Lincoln. He was someone a social worker could have tried to fix and support. And it was just a delightful evening. Henry read some poems from his book, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful occasion. I don't know how much more time I have. I can go on. Darius, what would you suggest?
If you'd like to, you can pass it off to another cousin or someone else in the room.
I can pass it on, and then we can go back and forth.
All right. Who would you like to give it to?
Well, I don't know the other cousins real well, so
okay, so
I'm glad to meet you tonight.
Because they're a different side of the family, so why don't we jump to Judi?
Hi. Nora and I grew up together, so of course, when I would come over, I would get to hang out with Gwen a lot of the times. And as it has been stated, she was really kind, sweet, and wonderful, but very straight to the point. And I think she kept us all on the right track, because if she thought she needed to tell you something that you weren't doing and you needed to do, she wouldn't hesitate to tell you. So, and Nora and I, we were what I call our look-alike cousins. We always got to play together. Our fathers were our brothers, and it's a lot of fun. I'm going to turn it over to my daughter also, who has a story to tell about Gwen. Oh, how do I do it? Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, sorry, I am at my parents' house because my parents are nice enough to puppy sit for me every day. So then I get off work and come here. So I stayed. My name is Niabmi, and I'm sitting right next to my mom, even though we're on separate computers. So I always felt very proud that I could say that Gwendolyn was my aunt, and I still tell my students that. So one of the stories that I have is that I was a very small child. I think I might have been in the second grade.
Mm-hmm.
And similar to the last cousin that spoke, Gwendolyn Brooks came to my school when I was in the second grade, and I was playing her in a play. And it's funny because I was playing her in a Black History play, and it's so interesting to think about how someone is playing you as part of Black history, but you are still very much alive. So I was playing her in a Black History play, and she took time out of her busy schedule just to come and see me in the second grade play her. And I remember everyone was so excited that she was there, and I didn't fully understand, why everyone was like, oh my gosh. But I just felt happy because I knew I was playing her and that she thought I was important enough to come and see. And, just out as an educator. So I'm an educator, a resident principal for Chicago Public Schools. And I'm also a diversity, equity, and inclusion subject matter expert in some college curriculums. And one thing that always strikes me about Gwendolyn Brooks is the legacy that she has left for education, especially for Black and Brown children, understanding who they are, and just developing a love of self and a love of the written word and the spoken word, and just the way that I'm able to utilize her when I was in the classroom teaching, or when I'm talking to students about the possibilities of what they can do and what they can be. So her legacy lives on. And I'll also say this just to tie it to Nora, my college has an entire building and park also dedicated to Gwendolyn Brooks. And Nora was nice enough to come down there and stand in her mom's place, for lack of a better word, to see and have that done. And that's very meaningful to me. And I guess that's my story.
You got to name a cousin to go to.
Okay. So, okay, there. Now I can see everybody.
Yeah, right.
I would like to choose, is it Safisha? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but
Okay.
No.
the cousin group. So
Nora, I can't hear you if you're talking. I see you.
that would take us
Oh,
out
wait,
of the.
let me see. Okay,
So-
I'm sorry. It was
She
me.
was
I hear
saying
you
that
now.
would take us out of. She was saying that would take us out of the cousin group. So,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So
But Carol, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I'd like to add one of my favorite memories of Gwen was when she invited a young lady. I was a director of a social service program in Chicago Heights that serviced teen mothers. And she knew this. I had told her that one of my participants in my program was interested in writing poetry and had written some poetry and would love to meet her. And so Gwen arranged with Nora, and another lady invited another lady to take us to see a movie with Denzel Washington and Whitney Houston, the preacher's wife. And we went downtown to a movie, and then we went out to dinner to the Ritz-Carlton. The lady that was included in this group was from the West Side, and she had just finished a GED program. And one of her desires was to have dinner at a fine dining restaurant. And Gwen fulfilled that by taking her and myself and the other young lady out to dinner. Well, the thing that was so gracious of Gwen was that first of all, she didn't have to do it, but she never thought of anybody. She never thought of herself. She always thought of pleasing other people and giving people an opportunity to experience things. The young lady that went with me brought her poems, and Gwen was able to read them and critique them and give information and critique back to her. Gwen was always known for encouraging young people, encouraging writers. And she was always known with family to encourage us and to do whatever she could for the family. And I just loved her, and I just loved Nora. We've had many, many wonderful times when we have shared family dinners, celebrations with lots of food. And one thing, Gwen loved funny stories. And my husband loved to tell. He was a great is a great storyteller. And Gwen used to love to hear his stories. And so we would have wonderful family times. So I knew her as a family member as well as a poet. And I loved reading her poems, but I shouldn't say but. I loved reading her poems, and I also loved being around her. She was unassuming, very loving, and very caring. Thank you.
Okay, despite the glitch, I'm going to try to share the story because before my mother is elevated to say, I want to share a story about, that's right, my mother murdered. He really did not like, she really did not like the phone ringing and answering the phone. And so one day when the phone just kept ringing and ringing and ringing in the dining room, I saw out of the corner of my eye, I think I was in the kitchen, and I saw out of the corner of my eye this being from the bedroom, and she came and actually was like a cat. She was actually sneaking up on the phone, and she took the scissors and she cut the cord because she was so tired of hearing the phone ring. And there was a moment of absolute triumph on her face until the phone started ringing again. Pick up the phone. So,
Wow.
so, so I just want to say, don't trust your, couldn't trust devices. You might not want to trust your devices. So, that, however, conveniently brings us straight up to, we are so on time.
We are on time.
Up to up to part 2. And before we start that, I want to say everybody can season, and this is the book. It has young poets in there, another book that my mother did, tips. It's just dropped here, comments by family members and peers, and and also her work divided into 4 seasons. And this was published by Brooks Commission and Sir Will. So, whoop whoop, yay! And so it is a book, or go to buy it there. So, so I did want to give it that plug because we have to get into 2 wonderful books, and one of them is this of the festival. And so I thought that this would be appropriate to let everybody know what the book is to people. And people are people I have known for years. And, and they have and one they both in the building, and it's I'm just going to start throwing stuff out there because some things they've each done and other things they've done together, but Thurlow Festival, the Institute of Public Education, so many that would not be in the world if it were not for these 2 people. And then we have 2 members tonight. It gets so hard to talk to you because there's so many different things for you interweave. But uh, and incredible in the field of education who has gotten all kinds of awards, and that would be Safisha Madhubuti. And then we have this other person, this dude, uh, who is creating, who has founded the Third Best Foundation. And how many years is that now? 50 something? Where are we? What number is that?
Five.
Ah,
This is the
okay.
55th year.
Then talk more about that when you talk, which will be pretty much this second, because I proudly introduce the marvelous and indefatigable people, Haki and Safisha Madhubuti.
Well, I'm going to start because Haki was clearly, as I think you had said, Gwen's second son, very much so. And so he will have the most, I'm sure, enduring comments to make. I have actually lots of wonderful Gwen stories. And I'd like to start with one at the beginning. I'm sure, Nora, you had heard this story. Was talking with Margaret Burroughs one day, the founder of the DuSable Museum. And Margaret and Gwen had been close friends for many years before they were married. And Margaret said they were at the Southside Community Arts Center, and there was a program where Paul Robeson was coming in to speak. And Margaret and Nora and Gwen were sitting together. And then this handsome gentleman came into the room who actually ended up being Henry Blakely. And according to Margaret, Gwen looked at her and said, "You see that man over there? I'm going to marry him." Nora, you ever heard that story?
Oh, yes.
I think that one of the beautiful takeaways of this evening and this session in particular gives people an opportunity to see both the beauty of the outward poet and the inner beauty of the woman. Many of the stories that are being told today, I can relate to the Ritz-Carlton story. So Nora, you'll remember that we would get together. Gwen would take us out to the Ritz-Carlton for Mother's Day. And whoever the waiter, waitresses were who would sit us, take us to our tables and bring the food, etc. And Nora would be doing all she can to hold Gwen back on how much money she would be giving to the waiters and waitresses who served us. And in the midst of all of that, in terms of her graciousness, she would have in her purse a plastic bag. And so whatever the food that was left from what she had ordered at the Ritz-Carlton, she would put in that little plastic bag and then put it in her purse and take it home. I remember that Gwen always loved to write letters and notes. And among the beautiful things that I have of her are just personally handwritten notes she had. And so whenever I would travel and I might be somewhere I would see some beautiful stationery, I'd always purchase some and bring it back for Nora. Nora Gwen is the godmother of our daughter, Laini Nzinga Madhubuti. And Gwen wrote a beautiful poem celebrating Laini's birth called A Welcome Song for Laini Nzinga. Hello, little sister, coming through the rim of the world. We are here to meet you and to mold and to maintain you. With excited eyes, we see you. With welcoming ears, we hear the clean sound of new language, the language of Laini Nzinga. We love and we receive you as our own. And Liney took very seriously being the goddaughter of Gwendolyn Brooks. And she was working back in the 90s at the Schomburg Center for Black Culture in New York City. And it turned out that Oprah Winfrey was coming to film a show at the Schomburg. And everyone there with whom she was working, excuse me, was so excited because Oprah Winfrey was coming. And Liney looked at them and said, "My godmother is Gwendolyn Brooks. And when there's someone coming of the stature of Gwendolyn Brooks, then I will get excited." Gwen loved children. And as you all know, she had this wonderful, for many years, poetry contest, that as a poet laureate, she would host for children. And we were very proud that on 2 separate years, her goddaughter, Liney, won an award. And on another year, her younger brother, Akili, also won an award from Gwen. And we still have pictures of those that we and they cherish. I had an occasion, the details of which I'm not going to discuss here, where Haki and I were having some challenges. And it was something he had written that I thought indicated something. And I talked to Gwen about it, and Gwen looked at me and she smiled. She said, "We're poets, dear. We make things up," which was very helpful at the time. I would also say that in terms of her love of books, after she passed, and I'm going to say something briefly about that, in the apartment, Nora, you will certainly remember, in the dishwasher, she had books. She had books all over the house, and she ran out of space, so she put them in the dishwasher. And I can remember the phone story, Nora, that you were telling. And I remember we all knew that when there was a particular soap operas that Gwen loved, and if you called her when the soap opera was on, you could be rest assured that she was not going to answer the phone. I think I want to close with 2 brief comments. One, we had the honor of being with Gwen when she passed. And we were in the apartment, and a dear friend of ours, physician friend, had been brought in to basically care for her in those last, month or so. And I remember that she had come out, the doctor had come out and said to Nora, "It's time." She said, "But you need to go in and tell Gwen it's okay." And Nora went in and talked to her mother. And shortly after that, Gwen made her peaceful transition. And so that poem that Val, you quoted from, "You're alive until you're dead." She was alive until she made the decision that it was time to pass. And I'll just close just to say that I have always been so enamored with her poetry that she was really like a sculptor in terms of her power to get to the heart of an image through the way in which she used language. And with that, to embody big and powerful ideas that have sustained her generation, the generations before her, the generations since then. I know that my grandbabies can read Gwendolyn Brooks' poetry and be inspired to know that, when life gives you lemon, they certainly can make lemonade out of it. And I think I'll just close as my handoff to Haki, just referencing that beautiful poem that she wrote about Haki called To Don at Salam, where she said about him, I like to see you, I love to see you living in the world. And with that, I'll hand off to her cultural son. They loved each other dearly, Haki Madhubuti.
Thank you, dear. Um, I think that all the comments tonight were right on time and enlightened me, most certainly in terms of the family comments. Gwen and I met in 1967 at a church on the south side of Chicago where she was working with Oscar Brown Jr., teaching Blackstone Rangers poetry writing. So I and other Obasi writers that Saturday morning showed up at the invite of her other cultural son. There was two of us. Walter Bradford was the other cultural son. He passed a few decades ago. And after she finished her lesson, she came over to greet us. We talked for a few minutes, and as the other poets left, I told her that I had been reading her poetry for many years while I was in the military. I was in the military between 1960 and 63. And it was a very lonely time, and this is the time I took to read. And she was one of the poets that I read almost every day. But as we parted, I gave her a copy of, I had founded Third Press in 1967. And the first book that we published out of Third Press was Think Black. And I gave her this book, and she looked at it. The title, Think 1967, here's a young man talking about Think Black, and then the continent of Africa is in the center of the book. And of course, I was Donnell Lee at that time. She took the book and she put it to her heart and looked me in the eye and said, young man, I'm going to read this tonight. And that started over a 30-year familyhood. Okay. And after she finished the workshop there at the church, she moved the workshop to her home at 7420 South Evans Avenue, in that wood frame home with about 4 or 5 rooms. And we would meet there weekly. Okay. And we became very close. And of course, her last book with Harper and Row was In the Mecca. And by that time, I was publishing with Broadside Press, and rather than Third World Press, primarily because we poets wanted to be published by other firms other than one's own. And she was so impressed with what we were doing, and Dudley Randall and so forth. She left Harper and Row after In the Mecca and moved to Broadside Press. And the first book with Broadside Press was Riot. Okay. And she published other books. And eventually she came to Third World Press. And the first 2 books we published by her at Third World Press was The Tiger Who Wore White Gloves and To Disembark. This is Disembark. Okay. Still, all both of them are still in print. But even before then, Nora will remember this. She got a position in New York. Might have been New York University. And she was teaching at Columbia College, and she asked me would I continue to teach the course because she was going to leave. And I said, sure, of course. And that was my first teaching position at a college. Back in 68. Yes, it had to be 68, into 67, 68. Yeah, the first part of 68. And that started my long sojourn in terms of teaching at universities. Because after that, she was invited down to John Oliver Killen's writers conference at Fisk University. And she had told John Killens about this young poet in Chicago, Donnell Lee. And by that time, I published 2 books, Think Black and Black Pride. And John Killens invited me to come to the Writers Conference in '68, and of course, at that point, my career began to take off. I got 2 job offers, one from Talladega and one from Cornell University, and really wanted to go to Talladega. Dr. Catherine Hurst. I did go to give a lecture there, and the white people who actually ran the college said, no, he's not coming here. And then I went to Cornell and gave the same lecture, and I was invited to join the faculty at Cornell University. And while at Cornell, well, I got the position because I didn't have a terminal degree. I didn't have a graduate degree. But Gwendolyn Brooks, Dudley Randall, Hort Fuller. Well, Dudley Randall was the poet and publisher of Broadside Press. Hort Fuller was a major contributor to our culture in terms of editing Black Negro Digest, Black World magazine, the Johnson Publishing Company published. And of course, George Kent, who was a professor at University of Chicago. They all wrote letters of recommendation. And there's a lot more to it. I'm not going into all that, but I got the position. And while I was at Cornell University, I wrote Don't Cry, Scream, which was the book that really put me on the map. And Gwendolyn Brooks, this is Don't Cry, Scream, and Gwendolyn Brooks wrote the introduction to the book. And it remains, it's still in print. We published it again at Third World Press. But this gesture in terms of letters and gesture, taking me to read with her and stuff like that, kind of cemented our relationship into a real familyhood. I'm going to skip, and then we published Black Books Bulletin. And the first person we ever put on the cover of the Black Books Bulletin was Gwendolyn Brooks. And that's when she had her natural, sitting in front of her typewriter. Okay. And there's an interview in this in Black Books Bulletin. But during the 70s, we did a book together with Kenneth B.C. Costa Sealy, Dudley Randall, and myself, and Gwendolyn Brooks, a capsule course in Black poetry writing. There's a lot more, and I can't go into everything, but she was the most important person in my life. I lost my mother when I was 16 years old, and came to Chicago to live with a stranger who was my father. And I only stayed with him for about 6 months. Ended up in the military, came back, and that's when I connected with Gwendolyn Brooks. I'm going to fast forward, skipping a whole lot because I ended up going to graduate school and all this other stuff. But I ended up at Chicago State University. And I took the position at Chicago State University because I was teaching at the University of Iowa in order to begin to bring to the South Side of Chicago the Gwendolyn Brooks Writers Conference, which we did for over 20 years. Had every major mid-level Black writer in the world come to Chicago State. The Gwendolyn Brooks Center for Creative Writing and Black Literature, which was a center basically focusing on the work of Gwendolyn Brooks and the great work that she brought to us. I, along with Kelly Norman Ellis, we founded the first MFA program in creative writing at a predominantly Black university. But that started with the work of Gwendolyn Brooks. Okay, in fact, in order to be a graduate of the program, you had to be grounded with most Black writers, but most certainly central was Gwendolyn Brooks. And we had the Hall of Fame. Okay, so we have those institutions, the Gwendolyn Brooks Center for Creative Writing and Black Literature, the annual Gwendolyn Brooks Writers Conference, and she came to every conference and was the last person to leave, you know. And Nora and everybody knows this, that when she sat down to sign books, she did not get up until the last person had his or her book signed. And then we have the Hall of Fame, and then the MFA program in creative writing. So I love Gwen like she was a mother. It was nothing. She helped Third World Press stay alive. And so many times I couldn't make payroll and didn't have any money. And all I had to do was just ask Gwen, and if she didn't have it, she would find it somewhere. Okay. And I've kind of picked up that attitude myself, that if I got it, you got it. And so I will say in closing that Nora as a sister, and I want to again thank Nora publicly for Haki Madhubuti Day at Chicago State University. And no, I did get emeritus status. That has happened as of about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm the University Distinguished Professor Emeritus at Chicago State University. So Gwendolyn Brooks started all this. Nowhere in the world would I have been able to reach the heights I have in terms of, well, certainly, I mean, she tamed my poetry, because I was all over the place. And but she did it in a way in which a loving mother would do, by example more than by criticism. We all miss her, and she never will be replaced. But she will always have a place in our hearts. For me as mother, and of course, we celebrate our 105th birthday, and saying happy birthday, Gwen. And to recognize and to say thank you to Nora. What Nora is doing for our mother cannot be quantified. It's difficult, and she knows this. Whatever I can do to continue this legacy, I will. And we got all of her books in print. We're bringing out this fall report from Part 1. We're bringing out also Black poetry writing, capsule course in Black poetry writing, and there may be one or two others. But we're going to have all her books in print at Third World Press, and we're moving. The press is growing. It's a 501c3 now, so it's a charitable organization, Third World Press Foundation. So Third World Press is a project of Third World Press Foundation, and so our mission and my mission is to keep the work of Gwendolyn Brooks in print and to make sure that she is the major and the foremost poet writer at Third World Press. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And first of all, I'm so excited about the emeritus because that's been a long slog. So I am so glad that has gotten worked out. Bravo, bravo. Then a
Thank you
couple
very much.
other things I thought needed to be corrected. I want to clarify that I am not cheap. So Safisha was talking about me trying to rein Mama in, but at restaurants about her tips. But what you have to understand is that I started at 20 and went up. Mama started at 50% and went and worked down. So it was not that I was trying to have her give people less than they deserved. I was trying to get her to work down from 50%. If we get it somewhere in the vicinity of 30, 35, then then fine, okay. But as it is, people, red caps and at the train stations, waiters who knew her at restaurants and stuff, fought for the right to serve her because they knew what was coming at the end of their service. So, and if I wanted to make sure that nobody thought that there was anything about nepotism in with Laini and Akili getting awards for anybody who has ever put a poem in front of my mother. You know that, like what I did, I picked the poems of mine that I wanted her to read very carefully. Not everything, because Mama left when you asked her to critique a poem. Mama left, Gwendolyn Brooks sat down at the table with her red pen, and she was not playing. She would bleed all over your work. So this could have been Laidi, been Akili. It could have been the child of some major Black Hollywood celebrity, whatever. If she didn't like the poem, let me put it like this: when my parents were engaged, my father would send sonnets to my mother. Mama would send them back with notes. Is this an Elizabethan or Shakespearean sonnet? Because I think you didn't notice it right here. So I just wanted to clarify that. We are
Nora, let me say one thing.
Yeah.
Her last teaching position was at Chicago State, but she had retired. And so I took her out to dinner and I said, Gwen, we need you at Chicago State. But she said, "How do you get, I'm retired." But I said, well, look, we need you at Chicago State. And I told her basically that Chicago State at that time was over one half, probably 2/3 Black women. And most of the Black women had children. And so we needed you to come out there, and you don't have to teach. Just do a reading a semester. We'll bring you in as a distinguished professor of English. And she said, okay, I'm coming, I'll come. And you have to write this down as one of the few favors I want you to remember. And she said, I will come, but I will come only if I teach. And that's critical. Talking about what she gives to our people, that she came and she teach. And I just want to say this to Val. Val, Gwendolyn Brooks loved you. She would always talk about you, okay? And so I want to let you know that I love you too. And you have somebody get the book over to us so we can look at it and make sure that it's ready to be published. But I will take care of it for you, okay? All right, dear.
Nora,
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to say, all while Haki was speaking, my mother kept saying, "Oh, we had his books all in the house. Oh, we have everything." So all of your books I grew up with.
Right.
Because, of course, Nora knows on both sides. Her dad's side, which was my grandpa's side, they were always quoting poetry, reading. It was we were just a reading family, a poetry family. We loved it. And so your books were there as well. My mom kept saying, "Oh yeah, we had all of those books. I had all of those books." So I just didn't want to let you go without mentioning that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I want to mention something too. Even as a school principal, Gwen would even when I was a school principal, Gwen would come to my school and do presentations. Nora, you came to my school a couple of times too. You remember?
Chocolate chips.
Yeah, chocolate chips. Yeah, and the writing competitions for the students. I mean, Gwen was everything, and the poetry is like fabulous. My favorite one was "We Real Cool," you know.
Which is the one Nora tell you the story about "We Real Cool." You know, she got tired of people quoting that poem as if it's the only poem that she ever wrote.
Oh wow!
Something that's happened to some of my poetry also, but we have just read Blacks. And of course, one of the last books we published of Gwen's was In Montgomery. In Montgomery is fabulous. Okay.
Yeah.
It really is. And we getting ready to push it back out as a major book of poetry by Gwendolyn Brooks. So,
and I love Rudolph Reed too.
Yeah, Rudolph Reed.
That's
really so much.
Yeah, right.
She made us all better people. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, now everybody gets chatty. Okay. All right. There is one of us was supposed to do that. One of us was supposed to talk about GB7, but I don't remember how we divvied that up. What you want?
I mean, it works either way. Either one of us can. Would you like to, or would you like me to?
Take which one you want. I'll do the other.
Okay. Well, first off, I have to say thank you to everybody who is in this room right now with us. There are some amazing stories in this room, and I have to say myself, Haki and Val, I love both of you. I know I've been in the room when things have happened with Brooks Permissions, and y'all have also been in the room, but I've not ever been able to reach either one of you. But I need you to know I love you both. Thank you for what you've done for us as people, as a society. Period. But the reason that we are all here is because of the amazing Miss Gwendolyn Brooks, the legacy that she has left, and we at Brooks Permissions felt it was direly important that we continue to acknowledge that legacy and push it forward, and not just acknowledge it, but also show the relevance in everyday situations, in every conversation, and every honestly every situation that we find ourselves in nowadays. And that kind of sparked the idea for the GB7. The GB7 is a way for us to have all of the hard conversations with all of the individuals that we really want to talk to surrounding the work of Mama. And I mean, we call her Mama affectionately, but surrounding the work of Gwendolyn Brooks. It is crucially important, not just for her the continuance of her legacy, but also for the continuance of education, as well as conversation building around a lot of the really important issues that we, as not only a Black society, but as a society in general, find ourselves faced with. So every month on the 7th, we will be having a GB7 event. The next one will be coming in July. And I will toss it over to Nora, who will give a little bit about that, and then we will get ready to get out of here.
Thank you. Okay, so the GB7 in July will be all about will be from the point of view of Jarima Gorham, who runs Burst into Books, an organization that promotes reading among young Black and brown children. And so she's going to be talking, and her panel will also be bookstore owners, including one that is a book mobile owner on the from the East Coast, who will be talking about their perspectives on getting young Black and brown children to read, and the critical importance of that. And then in August, we're going to do 4 Gwendolyn Brooks for different age groups. And the one in August will be for middle grades, from middle and upper grades, from 4th grade through 8th grade. And we're going to have different teachers who are doing different presentations of actual plans, lesson plans that teachers will be able to use in classrooms. We'll also have later this year and next year, we'll also have one that is for K through 3rd grade, and we'll have one that is for high school, and one that is for college and post grad. So we're very excited about those classes, and we'll be working on those, and you'll be hearing more about them. Anybody within the sound of my voice, glitchy or not, I hope that you will follow up by going to gwendolynbrooks.net for more information, and also to follow us, especially in social media, on Facebook. So Brooks Permissions on Facebook, just to keep a sense of, and we're going to be building our YouTube channel, but more about that as we grow. And so I think we can, if you don't mind, because we're overtime now, skip over Kitchenette Building and go to the final group piece. Is that lined up?
Lining it up right now.
Okay, then I can tell you all that as Darius said, first of all, thank you everybody for being on here and adding your joys and pieces of insight and wisdom and story. So thank you for taking the time. I know I'm repeating Darius, but I just had to thank you too. And also as part of Let's Praise Darius Day, then I want to mention that the thing coming up was an idea he had to take the poem Black Love and to reach out to different people to read the poem as a community poem, because hey, if it's Black love, then it's got to be about community. And so other than that, my last thing is there are tributes online that people have also submitted to Mama, for Mama. And Darius, you can tell them more about how they find those. And then, so I'm kicking it back to you one last time. And like I said, thank you everybody for being here.
All right, absolutely. Yes. There have been a number of amazing tributes that have gone out today from fans and friends and people who are true lovers of all things Gwendolyn Brooks. All of those tributes can be found across all of our social media platforms. You can find those on our Facebook. Just search Brooks Permissions. You can find that also on our Instagram. At Brooks Permissions, and you can also find that on our Twitter page at Brooks Permits. Look for Brooks Permits on Twitter. So again, as Nora said, this last piece is an amazing community read from individuals actually across the Midwest. It is not just folks from Chicago, but folks all throughout the Midwest who love and appreciate and respect the work of our illustrious namesake. And we're going to share that with you right now as we're getting ready to leave for the evening. So again, we just want to say thank you to everyone for participating all day long. If you have been with us all day since 9:30 a.m., thank you for being a part of this. It is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, we're going to give you Black Love. Here we go. In a moment. Oh, here we go. Of course, the last moment of the day is when the technical difficulties start. There we go. All right, here it is, folks.
Black love. Provide the adequate electric for what is lapsing lenient in us now.
Rouse us from blur. Call us.
Call adequately the postponed corner brother.
And call our man in the pinstripe suiting.
And restore him to his abler logic, to his people.
Call to the shattered sister and repair her in her difficult hour. Narrow her viewer.
Call to the elders.
Our customary grace and further son, loved in the long ago, loathed in the lately.
A luxury of languish and of rust.
Appraise. Assess our workers in the wild,
lest they descend to malformation and to undertow.
Black love. Define and escort our young. Be means and redemption. Discipline.
Nourish our children, proud, strong, little men, upright, easy.
Quick flexed, little stern, warm history women.
I see them.
In Ghana,
Kenya,
In the city of Dar es Salaam,
In Kalamazoo,
Mount Bayou,
in Chicago.
lovely, loving children with long, soft eyes.
Black love. Prepare us for all interruptions, assaults, unwanted pauses, furnish for leavings and for losses.
Just come out blackly glowing
on the ledges,
In the lattices,
against the failing light of candles that stutter.
And in the chop and challenge of our apprehension be
the always wonderful
of this world.
Thank you for joining us, folks. We'll see you next year.